So first of all, a very good evening to our eminent speakers who are on board with us here to educate, inspire, and give a little motivation to our crowd who are joining us this evening. So, well, it's finally happening. This is your chance to be inspired on how foreign internships or experience overseas can give you a major boost in your career ladder. So first of all, without taking much time or delay, this session, I would like to introduce our eminent panel of dignitaries or speakers who will be sharing their experience and ideas this evening. First of all, we have on board Kasturi Chedaraja Wilson. She is the Group CEO of Hemas Holdings, Executive Director at Hemas, and she is recognized as one of the 12 top women change makers in the country. So a very good evening and welcome to the session, ma'am, Kasturi.
Good evening, everyone. I'm quite thrilled to be part of this eminent panel and learning from the rest, actually.
Lovely to have you on board with us. And also we have Sanjika Aryavasam joining all the way from Australia. She's the CEO of A360 Accounting. She's experienced finance professional with a demonstrated history of working in many roles in leadership for elaborate accounting, business management, and strategy settings with various industries. So a very good evening, Sanchi. Welcome to the session. And also we have Hiroshi Jayasena. She's a musician, a media journalist, and an eminent social worker. She graduated in medical science and psychology, and she is much more focused on human welfare. So very good evening, Hiroshi, and once again, lovely to have you on board with us. I'm sure most of our audience are waiting to hear your opinions as well when it comes to overseas experience.
Thank you.
And also we have an ex-Aiesec. You can't call him an ex-Aiesec exactly, because Aiesec is something that you will live with you until you die. So we have Nilanka Suryampala, former member committee president at Aiesec in Sweden, member committee vice president OCHIC Sri Lanka. He's an experienced Aiesecor in local and overseas, and also he's a tech enthusiast. So I'm sure he has much more to add to our discussion this evening. And joining with us this evening, we have Francis Kwekuwanza. He's born in Ghana and now he works in Sweden. He's the sales manager of Benelux, Latin region, and he's passionate about sales, smart work, and leadership. So I'm sure you have something much different from the rest of our crowd to add to the discussion this evening as well. So once again, to our panel of speakers, lovely to have all of you with us this evening, and we hope to hear much from you this evening. So my first opening question goes to you, Ma'am Kasturi. So if you could share your experience. We know recently you were a much highlighted figure when it comes to, you were in the news, you were in the paper, you were in between the top women in Sri Lanka. So when it comes to you from your childhood up to now, are you on the path that you expected to be when you were 5-year-old?
Yeah, hi. It's embarrassing. I was in the news. I didn't expect that much of publicity for what the role I was taking, because I was just preparing for the role and I was more focused on the role than the impact it was creating. Having said that, I wouldn't talk about 5 years, but if I take about 12 and what I aspired, I didn't even dream of me reaching any part of a career like this and sitting on this seat. When I joined Hemas, I didn't believe that I would be sitting on the seat, because it was not about where I at the end destination. It was more about the journey. I just wanted to enjoy my work. My focus was my kids. And as a kid, when I'm 12, I think maybe the earliest point I could think about, I think I might sound really weird, but my dream was, of course, sports, to achieve the pinnacle in sports in what I did. And I needed a qualification because I owed it to my mother, but it was about getting married, having kids, being a housewife, and just dreaming about those happy moments and being a mother. I don't know why being a mother was such a big part of my whole dream. Traveling was part of it. So yeah, and career was not part of it at all. But I believed in education. I believed in a woman having her own space and thought, because I saw my mother. But did I dream? So in that context, did I ever dream this? No, I didn't. I didn't. I didn't even think I'll enjoy it, first of all. Yeah.
Well, ma'am, there's much more that I can, there are more questions that I can throw at you on how your career expanded from Hemas to being the CEO of the company. It's just amazing. I'll focus my attention to Francis now. So Francis, moving from Ghana to Sweden, it's a huge shift in your career, in your life, in your experiences and all of that. How did you really cope up with that change? What made you move from Ghana to Sweden?
A brilliant idea, brilliant question, sorry. I mean, it is quite fascinating because I do remember my journey a little bit when I was little. I had this conversation with my auntie once where she asked me, what do I want to be when I grow up? And at that point in time, I was like, I definitely want to be a ship captain because I want to be able to like steer a boat and travel from one place to the other. And then when I got a bit older, I was like, maybe it will be easier to get there if I'm actually a pilot and then I could actually fly a plane. So that was my resolution. And then I was like building on top of that. And I think my entire life and journey has been pretty much on that scale where I have one experience or I have one thought, and then I try to focus on building on it. Fast forward to the reason why I ended up in Sweden was because of Aiesec primarily. So I got to the university and unfortunately I didn't do nautical science or I didn't go to a piloting school. Instead, I went to a public university and actually studied biological science. And while I was there, I realized like in my first year that this was definitely not my calling. And based on that, I started actually taking extracurricular activities. And one of those happened to be Aiesec. And when I started working with Aiesec and getting exposed to new environments and new people, I realized how strong an organization this is. I think about 2 to 3 years in my experience or career with Aiesec, I ended up on the national team with Aiesec. And while I was there in Aiesec in Ghana, I was obviously engaged with a lot more Aiesec global entities. And in that scope, I realized that Sweden, being one of the founding nations or countries of Aiesec, was one that was not doing that great. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to take up that challenge and find out more what I could personally do to be able to contribute to it. And yeah, I think to give you a summarized version, this was pretty much how I ended up in Sweden.
Amazing, Francis. Amazing, Francis. Again, much more questions to throw at you as well. I'll focus my attention to Hiroshi now. Hiroshi, you've been a diverse figure when it comes to various industries here in Sri Lanka. If you call influence, and if you call music, if you call, well, dance or whatever, you name it. Hiroshi, you're an all-rounder, and also you are academically equipped with what you need. How did your journey begin, and how did you come to this point? You are more achieved at the moment.
First of all, thank you so much for that kind appreciation. I think, I guess when I was a kid, my brain was kind of wired to do many things at once. I cannot remember a time when I did only one thing. Like even when I was in school, I did my studies, I did music, I played 2 instruments, and I did dancing. And ever since I was 6 years old, I was always doing more than 2, 3 things. And now I just cannot stop. But sometimes it happens, you know, when you're in an industry, they say you need to specialize in one thing because one day people will remember you for one particular thing. So I was concerned whether I was, you know, am I limiting myself or my image or my brand because I'm doing multiple things? Am I diluting the great impact I can create in one thing? And I'm just dividing my energy doing many things. I always debate on that. But at the same time, I don't want kids growing up thinking that being multi-talented is a limitation. So my overall goal was to really heal people. And with the limited options, academic options I had, healing meant you have to do medicine. And so when I went abroad and I studied pre-medical studies and psychology, I got into other facets of learning, and I realized healing is not just a pharmaceutical medical process. It requires art, it requires qualitative things. So that kind of got me into learning psychology. And later on, with my extroverted personality and the craft I've been developing since school time, I pushed myself to do music and media. But I realized everything I studied, learning the human mind, it actually really helped me being responsible within media, because media is a big agent in changing perspective of people, shaping the way people think. So it actually hasn't been like a wasteful thing. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing multiple things. And right now I'm focusing mainly on being a media journalist and also being loved by people for my musical creations. So yeah, my overall goal was to really heal people. That's pretty much something like I would say small, if I can put it in one sentence.
Cherished, again, more questions for you as well upcoming. I'll focus my attention to Sanchi next. You mentioned before this session started that you moved to Australia when you were 16. So I guess most of your teenage prime years were spent in Australia. How did that experience moving overseas and studying overseas, how did that experience fuel you to be the person that you are at the moment, A360 accounting and all of that?
Okay, so you pretty much want me to summarize the whole life in what, 2 minutes?
Well, just give us a very short, brief introduction.
So I'll give you a little bit of a background of me. So my parents, they're both academics, and mom was a lecturer in university in Sri Lanka, and father was a well-known accounting lecturer as well. So from a very young age, they encouraged us to study. It just showed us that the importance of study, not just to us, but to many other kids who wouldn't have studied otherwise. So yeah, so when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a leader or an entrepreneur. And I remember, like in primary school, the biggest challenge for me was remembering the spelling of being an entrepreneur, because ask, oh, what do you want to become, like especially with essays and things in grade 1. For me, it was like making sure that I got the spelling right of entrepreneur. People say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be this, I want to be that. But because I saw my father and my mother, and also, you know, the family friends, how they were running businesses, how they were leading some of the corporations in Sri Lanka, and I always thought that was my calling. But later on, so my parents had the permanent residence in Australia, and so after school, I finished school at Aiesec College, and then Melbourne was the option, you know, like I knew I could get into a university in Australia. And then, so I got into Monash with the academic results I had in Sri Lanka. So, so I came here, and then my purpose changed a little, though, like I still wanted to become a leader in whatever I was doing. I wanted to kind of use whatever the platform I had to, you know, help out other people. Or so that's what I noticed the moment I stepped out of my comfort zone, and I wanted to, you know, kind of be on my own with the A360, as well as like, with, you know, serving other clients or working for another company. That's what I noticed. My platform got larger and larger. Now I could, you know, reach out to, you know, a lot of people if I want to help them out or give back, pretty much. That was my sole purpose. And also it gives me immense motivation to, you know, do more and become, as you said, like, you know, be a better version every day. So I do like take that very seriously.
Okay, Sanchi, amazing. So I'll divert my attention to Nilanka now. If there's one speaker in this panel who can speak more about Aiesec, it's none other than Nilanka, especially being a part of Aiesec in Sri Lanka as well. Nilanka, how did Aiesec really help you or boost your career experience, or how did it open doors that people who are others who are not part of Aiesec, those who does not get the same opportunity? How will you elaborate on that?
Well, just a bit before I get to my answer, I have to mention that Francis also has been in Aiesec almost as long as me, I think, or maybe more. He was actually the president of Aiesec in Sweden about 4 years before, I think. And that's how I got to know him as well. So getting to the answer, how I got introduced to Aiesec and how I got to Sweden. So initially, I mean, it all started with, again, my ambitions or like what I wanted to do with life. Connecting to the previous questions, like when we are young, we have different ambitions, but when we learn or when we get educated, we have different targets or things that we want to do. When I was really young, I wanted to be a scientist. This was mainly because I was watching a lot of Discovery Channel videos, and like I wanted to do experiments like related to, let's say, chemistry or biology. I was interested in space, and this was like my whole thing when I was very young. So I was studying a lot about these things until I got to like grade 9 or 10 in school, where I started getting very interested in computers and IT in general. And I had we had a very wonderful teacher in school as well, and I got more into this subject. And I wanted to be in IT tech industry. This is what I wanted back then. So I studied. I got into like University of Colombo, UCSC, and I was studying there, and there I found Aiesec as an organization I wanted to join. Initially, I didn't know a lot about Aiesec. I knew that you can get exposure to, let's say, meeting foreign people, working in different projects. This was the very brief idea that was given to me by friends who were in Aiesec before. So after I joined Aiesec, this is where things changed a lot for me. In university, of course, you meet a lot of people, but with Aiesec, this aspect of meeting people increases exponentially. Like it's a very different range when you think about it. You start working with people from different faculties in the beginning, let's say, and different universities in the same country. And after this, you start working with people from different countries. Aiesec is an organization which is there in around 120 countries in the world right now. And it has been there for more than 70 years. So the amount of experience and exposure that you get from this big network kind of intrigued me to continue being in this organization for a very long time. I've been in Aiesec for 6 years now. I'm not, but I've been there for 6 years. And in Sri Lanka, like when I joined Aiesec initially, I started getting interested in learning about people because we worked in different teams, which had different focuses, let's say sales or recruitment, different kind of things. And initially, I was not this outgoing person. I was very shy. I couldn't speak in front of a large audience. I couldn't, let's say, have a conversation if I meet someone new in an elevator, let's say. So when I was joining Aiesec, they give us certain options. You can join this area, you can join this area. And they told me about like a function which is about selling internships or like selling this experience to young people, doing sessions. And I felt like, okay, I wasn't good at this. I'm definitely not good at speaking in front of people. If I want to do this, if I want to develop myself, this is the hard path that I want to select. So I went ahead with that. Most of my friends were in different areas, but what I wanted to develop was that area. So I joined it. So like this, I kept challenging myself, doing things that I wanted to develop, but was difficult for me as well. And like this, my years in university went on with Aiesec, and I actually, even after I graduated, while I was working in an IT company as a business analyst, I still worked part-time with Aiesec, volunteering as well as working. And meanwhile, I felt, okay, this is a very good experience that I'm having. I should try for something a little bit different. And this is where I see, like in Aiesec, you can apply for like national teams of other countries and get selected if you are good. So I was like, okay, I need to look into different options. Maybe I want to apply for a different country and see if I can get a different experience. And like initially, this was an impulse. I didn't exactly want to say I want to go and start working. So I applied for Sweden. I was looking for different countries, but then I thought Sweden was a good choice. It's a country which is completely different. The culture is completely different. The working environment is different, and I wouldn't be able to expect things. And this is what I wanted. I wanted to be in an environment which I had no support. I had to start from zero. I needed to learn things on my own. And this was my expectation in the beginning. So I went ahead and applied for Sweden. I didn't think that I would get selected, but I got selected. So then came like hard decisions. For an example, I was working a job full time. And if I'm going to Sweden, I had to quit my job here, which I got through some sort of education that I had. And this was one of the hardest decisions that I had to take, because when you are, let's say, working, you have to give notice if you're leaving. And in the company that I was working, I had to give notice 2 months before leaving. And I wasn't even sure that my visa to Sweden would work out within that duration. And it was a very scary moment in my life. But I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead with this. Even if I didn't get to go, I still, I'm going to give it a chance and see. So somehow everything worked out and I was able to come to Sweden. And so far, like up to this moment, I believe that this is one of the best decisions that I've taken. I've learned a lot through this experience, which I'll probably get into in in some questions later on. So yeah, this is how it happened. It was not something that I would have ever thought about, let's say 5 years ago. I never wanted to leave the country. I was this very close-minded. Let's say I was like, I'm gonna live in let's say Sri Lanka. I wouldn't leave my city. I wouldn't leave the country. I wanted to be here. This was like a mindset that I had. But when I'm being challenged or when I'm being offered something that I want to try out, this is how I moved out of this zone. So yeah, now I'm here, and yeah, let's see how it goes.
So Nilanka, you mentioned that you wanted to be a scientist when you were a kid. So at the moment, with where you are in your career path, are you satisfied about where you are, or are you on the proper path? Are you still planning to be a scientist in the future?
Not specifically, no. I guess, like I said, my interests changed over time. And later on, like I said, I was more interested in IT and technology areas.
Right.
But with Aiesec, I was more exposed to, let's say, sales plus a lot of HR concepts. So
Okay.
I'm open to most of these areas. But I'd say I made myself not restricted and to be able to move between certain areas if required. If I like a certain area, I should be able to work in that area, rather than being restricted to one area that I've, let's say, studied in. So I think this mindset is also something that Aiesec brought towards me, that you can actually move to a completely different area if you are really passionate about it and if you want to move to that area.
All right, Nilanka. All right. So I'll focus my attention to Kasturi next. Ma'am, you mentioned that you from the time that from your childhood up to this point, you never dreamt of being the CEO of such a huge company. Where did you really start off, or did you start at Hemas, or did you start somewhere else right after your education? Can you just give us a little idea about how you started and how you came to this point?
So yeah, I didn't have career ambition, but I'm a very competitive person, and competitive means whatever I do, I want to do it well and feel accomplished. So as I left school, I also, I think, like Francis, I dreamt of a lot of things. I didn't know what I want to be, but then I thought being a pilot would be cool. I didn't know we had option of accountant, doctor, lawyer, engineer, and only thing I was good at was, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was good at math, so I had to say I want to be an engineer. So as I left school, I was headhunted, not for any academic thing, but because I was good at netball and basketball. I was playing at national level at that time. I was headhunted by audit firm. They represented Arthur Anderson at that time. And they were the A division mercantile netball champions. So I was headhunted to play netball. But being the person I am, and accounting was something which I never understood. I never offered in school because I didn't understand the concept of double entry. When you're a maths person, you'll understand that you don't even figure that out. But while I was working there, having the competitive nature, I wanted to do it well. So I learned auditing properly. And I was promoted as senior auditor. By that time, I was playing netball. I was representing the country, basketball, and I was not qualified. And I was headhunted again by a bank this time, again for my netball, and not for anything else. And I rocked up to my boss and said, I need to leave, because I realized at that point I gave up university with all of 15 minutes, I think, because somebody tried to drag me and I walked off. And the first time I gave up on anything. And I owed it to my mom to get a qualification. So, and I came from a family which didn't have money to even pay private education. So I had this conversation with my boss and said, look, I need to go and join a bank. I'm offering a fancy salary. And I thought, okay, I'll become a banker. So I believe whatever I put my hand to and make up my mind, I'll do well in it. You know, you at some point you have a confidence that you have the capacity to learn anything. I guess that's the main thing. And then he said, no, you wait back and the company would pay for your accounting because you're good at it. So that's how I became an accountant. And then I was good at that job. And eventually, fast forward, when I had to work full time, when I was 30, I had to go into and start fending for my kids. I used that as my entry point because I was a good accountant. I left Arthur Andersen, I was the director of consulting. And the qualification gave me the first entry into my job as an accounting finance director at that time of GM Finance. Very soon I found that boring. I mean, literally I had I appreciate that job, but I found it was not me, and I'm like having a curious mind. I did IT for a while. And I guess my bosses saw potential in something in me that I didn't see, but I enjoyed my IT and process role and moved into business quickly. So my first entrance was, as you said, was from an auditing platform. I didn't have a clue what I was getting into. And now I guess, I listened to Hiroshi saying, are you spreading yourself thin, right? So at one time I knew accounts, I did operations, I did IT, and I was like the hub in corporate office, and I would be a problem solver for anything. And then they gave me my job to move into as a managing director. I thought actually they're de-risking that role, because if I had left that corporate office role, I was a problem fixer. So I was at one point a master of none, jack of all trades. I don't think I'm a master of anything anyway. So that's how I went in. Everything was an accident for me. Everything was. But I guess I always want to do well in whatever accident I fell into.
Amazing, Kasturi. Sanchi, is accounting as boring as it sounds?
Oh yeah, I hate it. That's why I'm not doing accounting work anymore. I'm all into business and restructuring. So I started off as an accountant because I had an accounting and finance degree. Okay. But in the first 3 months itself, I found it really, really boring. But then the owner, luckily, as Kasturi mentioned, it was by chance. So I did get the chance to work with the owner of the company at the time. And he would have noticed something in me, or he would have noticed my boredom at least. And he asked me, would you be interested in, like, they were doing mergers and acquisitions at the time, and would you be interested to learn about it? And I was so happy. I said, yes, of course, anything other than double entry I would do. And so then only I got involved with mergers and acquisitions. And I was very fortunate. The person who led that was a partner of PwC at the time. So he was very passionate, and he taught me from, A to Z in very little amount of time. And since then, I've been involved with many mergers and acquisitions that happened. I was with that company for about 3 years, and from TGI Fridays that came to Australia to many other multinational companies, some hotels, to a lot of that. So I was a senior role at that company at the age of 21, 22, because I finished my studies when my degree at 19. So those 3 years, they were very critical. And then I did make some contacts during that time, which gave me confidence to go on my own and start my own consultancy. And my previous mentor from Oswim, Mr. Gordon Mullett, he was always, very supportive of me. And he said, you're on your own, and I'm sure, you can still perform. And that would have been better because, at the time, I was also thinking of, maybe starting a family. And because I've always pictured me as a mother more than anything. So, right. So that was always there, I have to give that a priority too and try to balance as much as possible. So, and then the rest is history, and here I am.
All right, Sanchi. So Hiroshi, now when it comes to, you are an editor of a newspaper as well. and like I mentioned in the opening round, you're an all-rounder. How does these extracurricular activities, all of this that you do, benefit you when it comes to your profession?
Yes, I actually am an associate editor for digital platforms run by leading media organizations. I think having extracurricular activities, most of my extracurricular activities are very public. Being a media journalist and being a musician, they all require me to go in front of the camera, or it's always a public career that I had. So I think it taught me how to really manage you representing yourself and you representing an organization. Because sometimes you're professionally required to represent the organization, and sometimes it might not align with who he or she is as her own brand. So sometimes it could be socio-political factors, it could be many things, but I have to learn the responsibility of managing and taking responsibility for what I do as an individual, and how, because they're both public careers. So sometimes my behavior as he or she the person could play a role in how I define and perform on a media platform. And sometimes the ideas that are put forward on a media platform might not align with he or she the artist. So sometimes I get all these questions, he or she, are you political? Like, artists shouldn't be political. And, I've had to kind of tackle issues like that. But then I have to say that is not my political, that is not me representing myself. I am professionally representing an organization. So there are times that I have to kind of balance all these environments to make sure that it doesn't affect each other. So I think that is the main thing that I learned, like being versatile and to manage and to, I guess, do I would say damage control. And there's a lot of things you learn when you're public on your own and when you're public representing an organization. So I think that was something that I learned within this past year, which I think was a tremendous learning experience and a learning curve for me. And I think also being an artist, you become very receptive to the emotions of people. I mean, whether you're writing a song or whether you're creating art, you're trying to resonate with someone who's going through similar emotions. So I guess it really helps you become receptive, and it helps you empathize with people. And that encourages me to really look into the content I'm creating in the media field, or what kind of impact am I trying to create. So I think they're all interconnected. We really can't compartmentalize, okay, this is what your responsibility is as a media personality, this is what your responsibility as an artistic figure. But they're all kind of intertwined. It's a big gray area. So I think there's a lot of ways that it actually impact on each other, I would say.
Hirsch, I'd love to ask if you are political, but then the organizing committee strictly advised me to refrain from making this conversation political. Yes. Myself, being a political journalist, would love to ask that question from you. But then I'll move to Francis. Francis, well, other than your academics, other than Aiesec, what else fueled you for your career ladder when it comes to extracurriculars and all of that?
Great question. I guess I have been very exploratory as an individual, and that has fueled my growth quite significantly. So I will maybe touch on a couple of them within this space. As I mentioned originally, growing up in the educational system back home in Ghana, you usually start off by going into a senior high school or a senior education, which is like within your after your K-12 is done, you go into 3 more years. And within that scope, you have to actually identify which field you want to be in. So already at that time, you have to point out if you're going to dwell in the field of science, or you're going to dwell in the field of art or whatnot. And that's even before your university. Unfortunately, it creates a bit of like a rigid process for each and every person during that scope to prevent them from actually branching over into other fields. I was, however, fortunate that when I was in senior high school, I already started exploring with different things. Thanks to one teacher that I was very well associated with, I started off by working in an organization called the Writers and Drama Club. This club actually really empowered me to gain a bit more kind clarity in how fluid I was with communicating with people, how interpersonal skills mattered to me, and how I could actually take center stage to be able to push a specific agenda. I ended up being the president of that respective organization, and this is one of the extracurricular activities I did along with my school opportunity. When I got to the university, I also continued to actually work in a drama club, and that opened me up to actually work in a theater, actually, where I was working in the film industry for a little bit. Unfortunately, that career did not go that far, but I did end up being an extra in one really popular movie, so look me up. That being said, I also worked with Aiesec a little bit. I worked with another organization called ICE while I was there. That organization was really a very powerful one because it enabled me to actually grow from in the field that I was in. It took me from being just a biological scientist in my first or second year and actually propelled me to go into a more specific direction where I got the opportunity to travel to Germany to work with Dutchess Institute for Human Nutrition, doing a little bit of microbiology of taste. And that activity enabled me to understand that, okay, this is not a field I also want to be in. So then I took another turn and then started working with Aiesec. While working with Aiesec, that's when I started exploring. I started off a bit in HR, I did a bit of exchange, and then I realized that, okay, both of these were good fit for me. And that's when I started building on it moving forward, where I did a small entrepreneurial business myself while I was still in school to be able to support myself. And then when I was done with that, went on to actually work Aiesec on the national team and so on and so forth. So yes, I think it's a lot of exploration, it's a lot of drilling down, and it's a lot of being able to be open and being curious in what you can actually find out there that you can dip your toes into.
Francis, can you elaborate a bit more on the business that you started while you were in high school on your entrepreneurial venture?
Absolutely, I can. And I do not know why my camera just keeps blitzing to and back and forth. But
neither
please,
do I, Francis.
I hope you can hear me very well. And
I can hear you. We all can hear you.
Perfect. Yeah, so the business I started when I was still in high school was also had to do with supporting other students in my university to have an international experience. And this was outside of Aiesec. And that was because after I was done going to Germany and back for that practical studies, I also did an internship with Aiesec where I actually went to Nigeria. And that experience also opened me up to understand that there were quite a lot of opportunities which comes along with doing a trip. Irrespective of how short the duration is, you still get the opportunity to actually develop yourself, meet new people, and build relevant connections for the future. So I supported people with actually taking a trip here and there, and it was more of an unsanctioned travel and tour service, I have to say.
All right, Francis. Kasturi, diverting my attention to you when it comes to you are in a top managing position of a major company in Sri Lanka. So I'm pretty sure you come across many those you want to recruit your company. If I direct my question in this manner, what matters the most, paper qualifications or industrial exposure?
I think on entry, if you're a fresh graduate, I mean, you're looking at entry level, we would look at somewhat of a paper qualification, but that's not that would just constitute about 30 to 40% of the decision making. Okay. Majority is about your life skills, how you have contributed to, that's how I would look at it. Your attitude, your passion, your values. And most importantly, if they're bold enough to take up a challenge, they're willing to be flexible, to be trained in other areas. Because that entry qualification becomes redundant within a couple of years, right? They get moved into everything else. It only gives you some discipline to that you've gone through some structure, you respect process, you have some ways of putting thoughts and writing reports. Those are the skills you take out of a uni, I'm sure. And the rest of it, how you network and like Aiesec and stuff, meet people. So it's mostly I guess it's a thing of what we rely on a qualification is in some ways how to judge your IQ or your aptitude. But having said that, I mean, I'm not sure how reliable that is as an instrument, because I know some kids do so badly in the exams here and they go out there and they do extremely well. And I can say it firsthand because my second son, I used to watch him struggle in school, struggle in the local system. And he flourished out there in uni. I mean, he eventually went from Malaysia, went into RMIT, and then I thought something is wrong. I mean, how can this child be doing, when he did well in Malaysia, I thought, is that system easier? Then he went into RMIT and he did extremely well. And I'm thinking, okay. So Sri Lankan system didn't bring the best out of this kid. So I'm talking as a mom. So that I'm very, now because it was close to home, I'm very mindful about asking the right questions. So most importantly, I'll tell the young people, whoever is watching, you have to have the passion and attitude. They say you have attitude and train the skill. And then you also should be able to be adapt into different environments, multitask like Hiroshi says, and the passion to execute and complete. I mean, this is the biggest problem Sri Lanka has. We have people a lot of people who are doing spreadsheets and concepts, and very few people who can take this and run and execute and navigate, because 100% you'll have problems and bottlenecks. How do you find solutions for those? Those are the practical skills, a lot of street smartness, and anybody who has got a tough life and has gone through tough lives, I would hire in a jiffy, because they know how to come. They're more resilient in the real corporate world.
So Kasturi, like you mentioned, so soft skills or being street smart or being adaptive, being able to take up a challenge, can those qualities really surpass paper qualifications when it comes to being hired by a recruiter or by a major company like yours?
So, what I would address it, if it's your first job and entrance, you'll have to have good stories, how you're going to display those qualities.
Right.
Otherwise, you only have to rely on the paper qualification, because if we don't have stories, but beyond that, if it's not the entry level and it's some kind of an operational role in between, something else, then it's all about how you have navigated. Your qualification won't come into the story too much. It's what you've accomplished. How do you achieve those outcomes? How did you plan it, and how did you achieve it? But I wouldn't look. I would encourage a lot of people to become entrepreneurs and start creating stuff, and that's what we lack in a country. We have a lot of people who want to join corporates. So yeah, how do you structure yourself and grow?
Amazing, Kasturi. Sancha, I'm sure you have something.
Sorry, before I forget, I had only one qualification, and that's CIMA. And for the longest of times, I didn't even do an MBA. I didn't believe in it in some ways, and my kids were growing up, so I didn't want to spend time away from them. So only when I was about 48 or something like that, I went into Harvard. But so that was once I got that qualification for my mother. After that, I just worked and displayed and kept learning on short courses. Though I did have to learn, because it will refresh your memory, your skills. Yeah.
Amazing, Kasturi. Yes, I think our audience definitely can pick something from what you said there. Sancha, I'm sure you have something to add to that.
Yeah, definitely. So as Kasturi said, just to break ground, you need some sort of a paper qualification other than. So that's just as she mentioned very early on, or if you want to get an internship or something like that. But the rest relies on you, 100% on you, and how street smart you are. And recently I came across this saying, don't try to be the person with the most accurate map. Just know how to read a compass, So that's leadership. It's not like, you could have the most accurate map, but if you don't know what to do with it and also read a compass, there's no point, Especially at times like now, where it's COVID, no one assumed that. I mean, none of these forecasting specialists, no one assumed this situation. So I guess resilience and also knowing yourself, like really being authentic. A lot of people are good at putting up a face just to get through an interview, and they may even dodge a resume, but they don't know how to perform in a role. They think just by pretending to be someone they're not, they'll get the job, and that's enough. Getting a job is one thing, but developing from there is a different story. So it's you have to be street smart, and you got to learn how to read a compass. You can't have all the answers in a book. So with me, so I started off at Monash, and uni was like a grassroots level education. You learn, you believe whatever the lecturer says, because you don't have any other experience. You just absorb everything they say, right? So then I did my CPA, which is like a professional education with accounting. And by then I had a couple of years of experience working as an accountant. So that was more like a treetop view. You could relate to some of the knowledge you're getting, and in your little role, you can apply some of it. But then later on, it's all your experiences and what you gain throughout your life that really adds. So I did a few courses with Harvard, and also one of the courses that Kasturi was part of. I remember I mentioned it to her a few months ago. So those were like real groundbreaking, life-changing experiences where you learn from that helicopter view, where you actually you absorb everything they say, as well as they're not teaching you a new theory that you didn't know of. It's all about self-reflection and gaining that perspective and actually applying it in whatever role you perform. You could learn a lot of things, but especially in Sri Lanka, I've noticed that people are they have that thirst for knowledge, but they don't know what to do with it. So you can learn other things, but as long as if you don't know how to apply, where to apply, and how to gain most of it, there's no point in learning that much. It's all about self-reflection and applying that knowledge that you have to in any situation, whether it's professionally or personally, or even in simple things like cooking or gardening. If you might know how to do it properly, but as long as if you don't apply it properly, then there's no point. So I guess that's the mindset is very important of a person, So, and I always tell to people, especially the newcomers, confidence is the best accessory you could carry. Competence will follow. You can always gain competence. The skills will follow, but confidence is what you need. So yeah.
Sanji, now Kasturi mentioned earlier about a difference in systems when it comes to Sri Lanka and compared to other overseas countries. You've been a student both here in Sri Lanka and then in Australia. How do you see the difference in the system? If you can,
you mean the education system?
Yeah, education system mostly.
So what he said was very correct, because in Sri Lanka, they have a great university system. So my mother was a lecturer in Sri Lanka, and now she's a lecturer, including at Monash and a few other unis in Melbourne. So she used to always tell me, what we taught in Sri Lanka was much of a higher quality, and we taught a lot of theories there. But here it's more the practicality, and how you apply it in a workplace. So it's like you cover the theory, but it's only a portion of what you gain as you do have opportunity to become a leader. And there's Aiesec. I was part of Aiesec when I was at Monash for 2 years. So all these other organizations and societies like Aiesec, so you can find your calling. There are more opportunities for you to find your calling in an overseas country. Yes, I agree. And also the other thing is, in Sri Lanka, to get into a university, even if you get 3 A's and top scores, it's still very hard. It's very competitive. There are only so many spaces available, right? But in Australia or in Malaysia or any other country, there are so many universities, so many, so you have your top universities, your second grade ones, then your TAFE colleges. So there's so many opportunities, so many streams are available, not just your engineering or medical learning. So there are many opportunities available. Therefore, a person can very easily find their calling and what they're actually skilled at. I'm sure, like, that's what happened with Kasre's son. Is that, you have all those opportunities. So, and no one's judging you. You can enter a university and then, you can work your way up. Say it's not the course for you, you can easily switch. So it's very flexible. I think there's no pressure to, stick to a curriculum, or you can add extracurricular or extra units to your course. It's very flexible. I guess that's the main difference I see in the education system. As with like attitude, yes, they're quite different, because we have, for someone studying from, say, I speak from Melbourne's view, like you have access to a lot of resources. So, you might say, for instance, you might give the same question to a student in Sri Lanka and Australia, but someone here would have resources under their fingertips, because, you very easily you can find, great libraries or even other resources where you could find that answer very quickly. Whereas in Sri Lanka, you have to really, work hard to complete an assignment or find the answer. But yeah, I think that really builds resilience. If you can get through that university education in Sri Lanka, that really builds resilience, and also courage, and it doesn't just give you a paper qualification. You build your overall other qualifications as well. So it comes down to you, how you pursue your studies, because some people just study to pass an exam, and after the exam they've forgotten all about it. But it's 100% how you carry out that.
All right, Sanchi. So I'll focus my attention to Hiroshi again. Hiroshi, how did, you've been a social worker, you've been involved in much more welfare projects and all of that. How did overseas experience, or how did that really help you to change your ideas or attitudes towards the world, or to what you are doing right now?
Yes. Personally, the first thing I want to say is that you actually getting an exposure from abroad means you're going to be a delegate of your country, because you are representing your nation and the culture wherever you're going. So I think you represent a culture, a value system, and you get to it kind of inspired me to do not just well for me, but to do well for my country, to represent it well. So if my country's a paradise, I take my value systems with me to ensure that the rest of the world knows that I come from a paradise. So I think basically I want to remind you that I actually have a social, media-driven youth charity group called Stepping Stones. So we actually work towards doing academic research for thalassemia, which is the most common genetic blood disorder in Sri Lanka, and doing a lot of collecting data from Sri Lanka. And I worked with the Department of Health Sciences back at University of Central Florida, and we were able to kind of understand the technologies that are out there, new treatment options, and we were able to link Sri Lankan institutions with those academic institutions. So I had the opportunity of doing that because I was able to be a delegate to my country, go study there, get that exposure and to build that network there. And also I got to kind of eradicate my limitations, I think, because I feel like when you kind of work in a Sri Lankan setting, especially being a woman, I felt like there was a certain way a woman was perceived in the workforce, and there were certain limitations that were not there when I was studying and working abroad. And this also helped me with the work I do, because I get to be this dynamic person in terms of, it didn't matter what resource limitations I had or the cultural barriers that used to define me, but I got to be a leader. I got to take over this versatile role, and I developed this confidence. So that's what I actually want to talk about. We all have a potential, but limited infrastructure, limited resources have not really shown you how far you can go. So that is why I decided to really work abroad as well. I worked for UCF Arboretum. We did, all these amazing projects to do landscaping, grow vegetables, to provide for low-income students, and we learned a lot. And I was able to take up the role of leadership as a girl there, because the roles of women and men were not really too different from each other. And I saw a new perspective being brought to the versatility of a working woman. So I was really excited to see this was a blank canvas. There's no cultural limitations. I was out there being whatever I want to be. So I think I brought that spirit back here as well. So that's what I like to remind you. Like, I think going overseas really enhances your opportunity to have access to infrastructure and resources you never have here. So sometimes you are aware that you have a potential, but you are not aware how far you can go. So for example, if you're an engineer, if you go abroad, you get to learn about these futuristic technologies, cutting edge software that you might not have back home. And you get to go the furthest you can go, and you build this confidence for yourself. And not only you get to build that confidence for yourself, but you bring it back home. You bring it here, and you slowly demand positive change in the workforce you're working in. So you're not only setting standards for yourself, but you're also slowly, positively demanding that change in the workplace. So I think being the co-founder of Stepping Stones, I want to remember my best friend Dulini. She's actually a neuroscience graduate from Texas, and I really miss her. So we actually got together and did this Stepping Stones charity group. But once we went there, we were empowered to see women like effortlessly doing amazing things. So that kind of gave me this confidence to come back and do a lot of things. So we were up to, basically we took this thalassemia research into the next step. And we did awareness programs on school level, and we did testing services on corporate level. And it was just an amazing experience. So I think with the overseas experience I had, I saw the versatility of your role as not just as a woman, but you're basically an outsider, right? Like I'm in Sri Lanka, I was never I was not a minority, or I was not in like a certain social group. But when I was there, I was an immigrant, I was an outsider, I did not feel like I belonged. Basically, I was a minority. I was everything that I wasn't when I was in Sri Lanka. The he or she they saw was so different from the he or she people see in Sri Lanka. And that really helped me empathize and understand a new perspective of trying to fit in, trying to feel like you belong, and having that sense of security. And that really made dissolve that ego and certain things that we have growing up. And it just made me come to the ground. And I think that value system also really helped me with the charity work I've done so far.
Hiroshi, you studied overseas, and you, to be the person you are right now, I think that contributed much. You're among the few who actually decided to give back to Sri Lanka, or decided to come back and work for the society, work for the betterment of the country. I believe it's a social responsibility as a citizen of Sri Lanka to give back to Mother Lanka. How do you view that? Well, is it a social responsibility, or is it okay to just study there and then settle in another country and not forget about the country that you were born in?
I think I would say it's a personal choice. But for me, I always grew up thinking that I got a free education from this country. Ever since I grew up, I studied 11 years at Visakha Vidyalaya, Mother Visakha. I just want to remember my beloved school for making me who I am. And I got everything for free. I mean, the accommodation, textbooks, teaching, everything, it was just almost free. And I become this this person who has accomplished a lot. And I just personally felt like it's nice to give back. And what I believe is, I feel like if you represent your country well enough, that is also giving back. I mean, for example, I created a great network. I used to tell stories about what Sri Lanka, I used to narrate the story of Sri Lanka to people I studied with. And I used to tell about all these amazing things we do, our culture, the challenges we overcame, be it wars, disasters, diseases, doesn't matter. And we create this impression, and they want to come and visit Sri Lanka. And even when I was doing my postgraduate internships at Harvard, we became delegates to our own countries, and we were actually selling what our country is made of. We narrate the story. And I'll tell you actually a good story. So my lecturer who taught innovation and entrepreneurship at Harvard, he was actually visiting South Asia. And I remember him dropping a WhatsApp call, and he was saying, I'm actually visiting Kerala. And after you told how beautiful your country is, I actually thought of, stepping in and say hi. And I was like, okay. And he just flew into Colombo. And then we were talking about our local education system, and I was telling how amazing, what a potential our local university students have. And then he was like, okay, let's do some workshops. And I was like, what? This is happening? And then I quickly got in touch with University of Moratuwa, and I just got in touch with the innovation clubs. And I was like, I'm sorry, but my lecturer from Harvard is here, and he would love to do some workshops with y'all. And he got to and he just shared all his contact details with these kids, and they had foreign exchange program potential. And it all happened within a year. And I was thinking, this is what you're capable of doing. Even though you're not able to, take them to the rest of the world, you can bring the world to them, and you can bridge that gap. You can be that middle point, the mediator who can create that connection. And so that networking opportunity actually made that happen. So that's one of many examples of things, how, you being a delegate to your country, how a lot of things you can do. So yeah, that's amazing, I would say.
Amazing indeed, Hiroshi. Focusing attention to Nilanka, moving from Sri Lanka to Sweden, what are the main challenges that you faced when you got started with your career? Can you give us a small idea about that as well?
Yeah. So it's an interesting journey. It was a very interesting journey. How do you say? It was obviously tough at the beginning. The first 3-4 months were quite tough because for me, I came into I was working with in a team where there were 7 people, including myself, from 7 different countries. And these people had very different mindsets, very different ways of thinking. The way they work, completely different. When we bring a question to the table, the solutions that come are very different. So to get to know these people, to understand their perspectives, this is the initial challenge that I was facing here, as in my work environment. And also, the team that we were working, we were living together in the same house. So there's a lot of more challenges that you face when you're living together with a very diverse group of people. The way of living, the type of food that people cook, maybe their daily habits. These are things that we don't usually think, because in Sri Lanka, when you're living with your family, you know how everyone behaves. It's usually an expected behavior that no one maybe talks about when you are young, but when you are older, it's there and no one talks about it. But when you're in this new environment with completely different people, the initial few months, you have to discuss a lot, set ground rules on how to behave, what are the kind of behaviors that we need to work with and what not to do as well. And for an example, we had I had one friend who was from Russia in our team, and the way he gave feedback was very direct, and it's not nothing is sugar coated. It's very direct feedback. If you did something wrong, it's in your face. You did this, it's not correct. So these kind of feedback, for me, I tried to empathize as much as I can, but there were people in our team who felt very attacked in the beginning in these kind of feedback. So these kind of things are things that you learn in a foreign work environment when you're working with a lot of different people. Apart from that, obviously for me, challenges were when if you're most people in Sri Lanka, you live with your family or with your relatives until probably you're married maybe. So for me also, I was living with my parents for most of my life and with my relatives for some time. So when I came here, I had no experience on how to live on my own. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to take care of myself. So I had to start everything from scratch. I was on the phone with my parents on asking how to do certain things, how to cook. So I had to learn all these things to, live on myself. This is what I expected of coming to Sweden, because I wanted to be on my own, start a whole new experience by myself. And right now, by this time, I know how to do taxes. I know how to pay bills. I know how to take care of a completely international team, how to give different types of feedback. And this kind of experience you probably wouldn't get in a general work environment in, let's say, a single cultural team. And this is something very interesting that I've got. And yeah, this is the gist of what I understood within my 2 years there.
Thank you, Nilanka. Nilanka, can you, I think you're the most suitable person to direct this question as well. How do you see the opportunities given by the newly established OGT program?
Mm-hmm. Well, like the product offered by Aiesec, like outgoing global talent, or in a very general sense, let's say like foreign internships or global internships, this product given by Aiesec, it's something very rare that let's say specifically young people in the world get, and young people in Sri Lanka gets, because you rarely get the chance to go for an internship in a different country. And most people in Sri Lanka probably don't know about this. And it's like, this is why we should do programs like this to spread awareness about this. And to give a simple example, like to expand on what I mentioned earlier, if you are working in Sri Lanka, let's say in a company, or you're doing a group project in university, you're working with people who have the same mindset or had similar academic backgrounds. And 99% of the time, probably you are working with Sri Lankans in the team. And so when you are working or when you are bringing up solutions to different problems, you bring up the same kind of ideas, the same kind of mindset is there. So there's really a chance that you get to learn something new from your colleagues. There are chances, but there's less chance. And even if there are more experienced people in the team, what you'll be learning is something that they learned, not something new outside of that experience itself. So this is something that you get from a foreign internship experience, especially because when you work in this team of foreign individuals, like similar to what I said, you learn a lot of different things. You get a lot of different mindsets. For an example, you say something and like, okay, this is the solution that I want to bring onto the table. But someone else might say, okay, this doesn't work here at all. This is how we do it in this country. And can you think about a solution that works like this? So if you think of Sri Lanka, let's say you bring a type of solution which most people agree with, but in a foreign team, you bring, let's say in my team, 7 people brought 7 solutions, and maybe one of it works. But when you, let's say, as an individual, go to a different environment and start working, you know 7 ways of doing the same thing, which might work in that environment. And if I'm, let's say, to come back, I came back to Sri Lanka and start working there, I would bring 7 types of solutions to work in the same area. So this is the kind of experience that you get when you work in a foreign environment. And this is the type of thing that Aiesec gives through the Outgoing Global Talent Program. Also, when going to a foreign country, you experience a completely different culture, completely different ways of thinking. Something that like would shock most of you is like here in Sweden, like if let's say a family has a child, both parents get 480 days of leave, 80% paid, 480 days of leave. And this is for both parents, not for a single person, because they believe both parties are have a responsibility of raising the child, and they are given this time period to, you know, take care of their child and give this attention to the person. So this is something that I saw as something very amazing, which is here in Sweden and some other countries here close around as well. So you never get to know these kind of things unless you go to these countries and to, you know, learn about these things. And this is just one thing that I got to know. And there's a lot of things here in this country, like you get exposed to a lot of different open-minded ideas. You wouldn't be surprised of different things after some time living in these kind of countries. So it's pretty amazing, the foreign experience that you get. And Aiesec is, as I said, is a way of getting to one of these experiences, and very less people know about it. It's not that difficult to apply for these internships. Of course, you need to have a certain level of experience to get selected.
Yeah.
But there's obviously a chance of getting selected. Like there's what you need to do is to apply and see whether you can get selected.
Thank you, Nilanka. Sanchi, rather than being an employee in a foreign country or in overseas, what's your experience being an employer? What's your experience in that context?
In terms of hiring, or just
in terms of hiring, in terms of experience, in terms of working, or difference between working with Sri Lankans and working with others from the other
Look, I enjoyed I mean, I enjoy both those roles. Being an employer, of course, you have your flexibility. You get to sail the ship in the way you like to be led. So you get that flexibility in terms of leading and setting up your own policies and procedures and so on and so forth. But I should mention that I've walked into many boardrooms, many areas where they were all men, or I was discriminated, or I had all the reasons to be discriminated upon. I was young, I was a woman of color, so the brown and all of it, so, but then I thought I should use that spotlight, whatever the factors that I got discriminated upon, or, people do look and think, what could she add here, kind of a mindset, right? So this is very common in any country. I don't think it's just here. So I pretty much use that spotlight I got to my advantage. I knew I anyway get noticed being, all these factors. So whatever I say would have a greater presence. So that's how I kind of use that as an opportunity, rather than thinking, I get discriminated, I don't get through interviews or whatever, and just be demotivated by it. Instead, I use that as an opportunity to actually say something that's more valid and get that attention of the people and use it in a positive way. And that's how, that networking, all these little factors do add up. It's not your paper qualification, as we previously mentioned. So, so being an employee, the same thing. Every time I do get a lot of resumes sent by many Sri Lankans, non-Sri Lankans. Always, they always, call for advice. And I am a mentor for CP Australia as well, and I do extend my services that way as well. So it's a great privilege, even for Monash, I work as a mentor, and all of these things I really enjoy. And as I mentioned before, that platform where I could help out to a greater audience, that's my purpose. That was my calling. So I thoroughly enjoy that more than any other financial benefit that you get out of it.
Kasturi, your experience as as a person who recruits people to your company, and as a CEO of the company as well, working with employees who had overseas working exposure and those who did not get the opportunity to have working overseas exposure, how do you see the difference, or how do you see, give us a comparison between those two types of employees?
So I guess if you have overseas exposure, just the fact that you're in another country, you're learning another culture, learning to work with others itself gives you a lot of exposure. And it gives you the element of confidence. But most importantly, what I see, what they bring to the table is understanding how other markets work, how business models would be different, how how do you navigate that ecosystem versus this, whether it's very relevant, but that you're widening your exposure. Having said that, people who have worked extensively overseas, and when they come in, the cultural fit is a bit of an issue. How do you integrate with the Sri Lankan? How do you understand the Sri Lankan consumer better? So I liked what Hiroshi said. If you can't, you can bring the world to Sri Lanka. So for me, we believe at HEMAS, we always believe that we have to learn from outside as well, from best practices, right? So our systems and processes, so 15 years ago, we would have got Ian Hewitt, who came and opened eyes about what global HR standards were, setting up processes. I've gone to NUS, I've gone to INSEAD for a week program, 2 weeks. So you go out there, you meet people, more than the academy, you go and meet people, you get your networks, and then you learn from everybody else. I think Sanchi, Chirushi, all have been to Harvard. First, the experience of Harvard is amazing, but the network you make and the amount you learn from the other people is important, is actually what you take away. So the overseas experience per work per se, it opens your mind to think that, the models don't work the same at every country. it just gives you an opportunity to understand it's different in every place. So it's an advantage. But having said that, in Sri Lanka, if you can't give that advantage, you can even give the talent advantage to go out for mini breaks or bring somebody else from outside in and expose them. And that's it. So any exposure is really good. I wouldn't believe even within the company, if you're too long in the company, I guess in the same role, you're not doing yourself a favor at all.
Right.
And so I did 6 roles in my 18 years. Otherwise, I think I should have left and gone to another company. So yeah, so any exposure is good exposure. And for young kids, I guess it gives you the confidence of being independent, solving your own problems, not running to your parents for everything. Yeah. And just being, growing up and navigating life.
All right, Castor, any exposure is definitely beneficial. I'll move to Francis now. Francis, similar question to you as well. What makes you recruit foreign interns into your business? Is there a difference in efficiency, attitude, and other aspects? Francis?
Brilliant question. I just first off have to really recognize the diversity we have in this panel and how robust the experience cycle looks like in this space. Anyone who is listening, I think you are getting a lot of golden nuggets by listening to these exceptionally talented people and very well experienced people. I will start off by actually trying to prioritize this and put it in a scope that makes it maybe a little bit more relatable. And by doing this, I will start off obviously from my own experience when I was graduating from the Aiesec world into a normal job, so to speak. The way that I actually ended up getting this job was not through an application process, was not through a robust CV that I sent round or whatnot. It was through a networking event. So I actually found myself in one networking event with a fintech organization, a financial tech organization. And in that space, what happened was I had a conversation with the COO of the company and the CEO of the company. By just having a conversation with them, understanding the business, showing a genuine interest, and also being able to propel or talk about my stories in a more confident-oriented platform and let them understand that there is relevance to who I am as a person. Like I left that space after having just 5 to 10 minutes of conversations with them. The next day I got an email from them and they were like, hey, we had such a great impression of you and we would like to meet you again. So then I went again into a room with them. We had a conversation and then they were like, okay, we would like to actually have you work with us. At that point in time, the only real background that I had or experience was working in Aiesec. And on top of that, I had my bachelor's degree in biological science and a major in entomology and wildlife. So definitely something entirely different from the role that they offered me, which was as a business consultant. I took up the role and I only worked in the role for 4 months. After 4 months, they said, okay, based on your work attitude, your skill set, your ability to be able to actually adapt to this environment, we would like you to escalate your growth and actually just take a curve and end up being the head of the entire department that you're working in. This was groundbreaking for me. I mean, at that point in time, I was like, fuck yes, forgive my French. I can totally do this. And I'm definitely going to push this to the next level. And that was pretty much how I ended up in that industry. And it wasn't because of having an immense experience through a CV-oriented process or anything like that. So that's something that I wanted to point out first. And let's flip it around and actually look at it from a more mechanical standpoint. As an employer, having people that I'm actually talking to or trying to consider for any role whatsoever, there are 3 primary things that I really care about. First off, it's a relevant experience. And by that, I'm talking about like, irrespective of if you are just a student, irrespective of if you have had work experience in real time. What I care about is the ability you have to be able to connect the dots of whatever experience you've had to which role you're applying for and the integration that you see yourself going through for the company or for the environment you find yourself in. So it doesn't matter where you're coming from. It really matters how you can be able to connect these respective dots. The second thing that I care about is demonstrable skill sets that you can actually put into practice. So my recruitment process is fueled by not only having let's have a conversation one-to-one. There is a case study along with it. There is a cultural interview that also comes with it. And that makes me very confident every single time we select someone, because we have been able to understand where the person's value orientation actually lies, what cultural standpoints or blockages we may actually face, and if we can potentially jump over them as hurdles. And more importantly, we are able to understand how that person sees the organization and me as a potential manager for them, because that also matters for the relationship and for them to be able to deliver above and beyond what we're actually seeking of them. And the final thing that I look at in the priority scale is your background and your actual experience. And here I'm talking more about life lessons. My dad passed away in 2007. And one of the major things he told me before he did was, it does not matter how short an experience you have. What matters is what you ended up actually learning from it. And that's what I also really, really capitalize on, the life learnings. What actually you got as a defining moment from whichever experience that you have as an individual. And from the very, very latter scope of things, I consider your academic background and how that can also, of course, push you above everyone else, if everyone is pretty much on the same scale. So for the listeners, I really hope that you are actually taking note of this, because I have been through different processes myself, and I'm sure the panelists can also speak to this. The academic priors may get you through the door, but to actually score you a gig or to put you above and beyond everything else, what really matters is how your experience brings relevance to the role that you are actually considering. So that's my take on this particular thing. And another thing which is also very concrete, which I want to really throw out there for everyone. A lot of things have been mentioned in this space, and most of it was centered around confidence and the ability for you to be able to present yourself and be able to use that foundation of confidence. Other things which I also really, really cared about was curiosity as first and foremost. How curious is this person? How researched is this person? How genuinely intrigued are they to be able to actually care about not only the role, but the people in the company? Another thing, interpersonal skills, also fueled with genuity. How can I actually relate to you? What can I consider you as after this process is actually over? That impression that I got of you, was it warm? Was it fluid? Was it exciting? Did it make me feel that this particular person knows who they are and they have this self-awareness that Aiesec preaches every single day? There is also something that is becoming such a big buzz right now, which is being data-driven. And I know that a lot of people talk about this in such a loose aspect or loose terminology. The reason why I'll bring this up is there is a big difference with being data interested and being data driven. Being data interested is where you find yourself in the scope of having just a genuine interest or a level of insight. And insights, what insights means is you have information beyond the obvious, things that everyone else would see. But being data driven actually really takes you to that escalation point where every decision that is being made or every conversation point is being dug into by nothing else but using data to make strategic decisions. And it's so easy for us to come out with theoretical hypothesis that has no basis. That is just how human beings are. It's very important for us to be able to limit these thought processes and actually try to qualify them as best that we can in whichever conversation that we are in. So listen more and talk less. That's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Thank you.
Francis, so have you got any experience in recruiting Sri Lankans to your business?
At the moment, the answer would be no. So if there are any of you in the audience who are definitely looking to move to Sweden and you are excited based on the things that I've mentioned, please do check me out on LinkedIn or just let me know. I'll be very, very happy to look at your CV, and then we can have a chat, if not for anything at all, so that I can learn from you and you can from me as well.
All right, friends, I guess that's a message to our audience as well. So right before we move on to the closing remarks, we have a quick session of some rapid fire questions. So keep it as interesting as possible and keep your answers as short as possible. So my first question is to you, Hiroshi. What motivates you to get out of bed in the morning?
High volume alarm.
That's it?
I would say, I mean, definitely there is a to-do list and a list of notifications that happen to be on my phone every day. So I think I wouldn't encourage you to use your phone, like that shouldn't be the first thing. But I would say like there's certain list of things that I plan out the night before, and
right.
I wake up being motivated to really do it.
All right, Hiroshi. So next question is to you, Sanchi. What's your favorite part of your business?
Favorite part
of your business, according to you?
You're your own boss, you know. It's like my car, my section. So, yeah. Yes.
All right. Nilanka, can you name another individual who inspires you and why? Very shortly.
There's one person like who came to my mind in like at the very moment you told it. Like this person, I think is watching this at the moment. He was actually one of the presidents that I had in Aiesec when I was in university, and his name is Kanil. He's one of the people who inspired me a lot when I was working in his team, and both of us had like similar mindsets and similar ways of thinking. And I still am in touch with him, and he pushed me a lot to be in Aiesec also. So this is another reason. Yeah, so he inspired me a lot, and I really admire like the way of his thinking. And yeah.
All right. Next question is to you, Francis. What do you do in your free time?
This is a very, very interesting question because I would say that I don't have free time. I am most often not actually doing research here or reading this or trying to find something else. I try to play basketball from time to time. I don't really classify that as a free time, but yes, I would throw that out there as a hobby.
All right. Kasturi, what is your motto?
Be the change you want to be. No point preaching about it. If you want to change, you have to be the change first. I think that's Gandhi's thing, but I remember it so much because that's what I keep telling people.
All right, amazing, Kasturi. Hiroshi, what's the most cherished moment in your career life? Give us an experience that you cherish the most.
In my media career, I think one of the most precious moments is the day I got to interview Kasturi.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely up there, girl.
All right.
He was one of the best who could get the best out of me and put me at ease because
yes,
you did it in Sinhalese. I must say so my mother tongue is not Sinhalese, it's Tamil. And okay. I'm not good at Tamil, but Sinhalese, I can speak Sinhalese in a very colloquial way. And she had to interview me in Sinhalese. And I thought it was really good. People thought my Sinhalese was good, but actually she kind of eased me into it. So
you're great. Like, it was amazing.
It was hilarious, but it was good.
All right, Kasturi, next question is to you as well. Is there any unforgettable hardship that you faced in your career life?
In my career?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, one incident which was recent, it's a hardship is because it was a mental hardship. I don't, something if I can solve, it was within my control, I wouldn't have said it's hardship. It was an issue where there was another colleague for some reason had decided to say something which was not right about, in a compliance manner about my staff. And okay. I decided that, so I have a habit, nobody under me gets hammered. I take this thing. So I told the board, sorry, if there's an issue, it's me, but it didn't happen. And it had gone to the main board. And I took a call. I walked up to the family and said, you have an inquiry? And if my staff has done it, I'll walk. If not, I want that person, the other person who made this, to walk. First time I've ever done it in my career. And they were shocked that I said it, because I'm normally a person, I'll tell things and I'll walk off, be and let live. At this time I thought, no, enough is enough. And I said, if I'll keep quiet for 2 weeks. And that was the toughest 2 weeks, because I had to motivate. I couldn't show it to the rest of my teams. And I had to be strong, and I knew clearly this hadn't happened, but I didn't have answers why somebody would do such a thing. So the fact that you don't have answers and you're questioning because you live by the motto, you don't do things, harmful things like this. So it was really tough. And at the end of it, it so happened, it was clear the staff hadn't done it, and eventually there had to be an exit for whoever. But I'll tell you, the mental stress of things which are on the values and ethics is really tough. So that was tough.
Hiroshi, what if I direct the same question to you? Any unforgettable hardship that you face? Because I'm especially directing this question to you because you work in different fields. So anything like that of that sort?
I think being in the entertainment industry, I mean, you get to, deal with rumors on a daily basis. So I wouldn't say so far is there something that has been an unforgettable hardship, but I would say medium-sized hardships every day. But I think I've tackled it quite well. But yeah, I cannot really recall of something as of yet. I have been approximately for 2 years now in both media and art. But I'm preparing myself for whatever the situations. So yeah, I'll update you if it happens.
Definitely. All right, Sanchi, if not for 360 accounting, if not for the person you are today, who would you be really?
I would either be a fashion designer or a cook. I love cooking. That's my stress relief. Every time I feel stressed or something's not right, or if I'm hungry, I cook or I bake. So I would have been, a lot of people have asked me to even go to a master chef. I cook on my own time, my own pace. But yeah, either fashion design.
You saw some amazing talent from Sri Lanka, a young chap winning master chef. So definitely. Could have seen the adult version of that as well if you participate. Nilanka, if not for Aiesec, what would Nilanka be doing right now?
Oh my God. I would probably be working in Sri Lanka in some company, because I found Aiesec in university, so I was already in IT at that point. I would probably finish my degree and get into work, a very simple, normal work life in a job. Like I wouldn't be here talking like this. I probably wouldn't have the capacity to speak in front of a lot of people as well. A very timid person, but doing some sort of a job in a company. That's it.
All right, Nilanka. Francis, on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you now and why?
With this space or my life or what exactly?
We'll just focus on your career. We'll just focus on your career.
Okay, wonderful. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say I'm a strong 9. Because the company I work with is absolutely incredible. The team I work with are absolute superstars, and I count my blessings every single day. So a strong 9.
Final question, Kasturi. If you are given a chance to go back, what would you change of your life and why?
What I would change of my life? I learned to dance. I could never do that. And I watch people jiving and I'm thinking, oh my God, why didn't I do that when I was young? That's the only part I would do. I feel I missed out on a lot, and I watch people, young, old, doing this lovely, they dance so well. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't I? And I love it so much, but I can't do it. Yeah.
Okay, so right before the closing remarks, I have one final question, something that I'm responsible to ask. We have 3 eminent women speakers here sharing ideas. They are brilliant ideas with the panel and the audience. Being a woman in the world of business, did you face discrimination? What are the hardships that you face? what is the message you have for the women out there who are listening to you right now at this moment? Open question to all three of you brilliant ladies. I'm sure Hiroshi can go forward.
Definitely. I think being an artist, being in media, I kind of saw the requirement of having to change how women are perceived. I mean, the qualities, the attributes of women, how it has been from a traditional period of time, and that the change that we require has to be done through even through the entertainment industry. Like if you take all these entertainment products that are out there, the woman is the one who's always have to be saved. She can never be the knight in shining armor. She's always the damsel in distress. Or she's always portrayed as a fragile, character. And I see a vision to really change how women are perceived. There's so much of the intellectual capacity and even physical power. There's so much more we can appreciate. So I see that both in terms of the media industry and in music, that change is required. So I'm in a space where I am attempting to make those differences. So hopefully it'll manifest in the work I do.
All right, Hiroshi. Sanchi, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's correct. And also, you shouldn't think of yourself as a woman. And I've had this conversation with Kasturi before. It's you're performing a role. So you just go out, forget your gender, forget who you are, not your roots, but you stick to your identity and be true to yourself. Forget the gender part, just be you. And that's it, otherwise if you keep punishing yourself for being a woman or thinking that you get discriminated just because you're a woman, you're already starting off at a very negative point. Rather there are things that we can control, and then there are things that we can't control. So the only thing that we can control is our mindset and how we put ourselves forward. So just forget that you're a female, you get discriminated, just be you. And be confident. I guess that's...
Thank you, Sanchi. Thank you, Sanchi. Now, Kasturi, especially being a CEO of a Sri Lankan company, coming up on your career ladder up to this point, being a group CEO, what are the challenges you faced? Did you face any discrimination, and how did you tackle that?
So to be honest, I think what Sanchi said is a lot very important to all of you young ones. First of all, it starts with you. So because I was a tomboy, and it was only a sister and me, and my mother and father, I think, encouraged me to be a tomboy. I had forgotten that I was supposed to be this girl, right? So when I grew up, also I forgot, I was not thinking of myself as a woman or whatever. I was just this individual doing a job and wanting to do it damn well. I was a mom, true. So, and I was, in some ways, there's always the law of attraction. I got attracted to HEMAS, and that's an amazing organization, which was like today, recently, I was trying to talk about some talent, and then I stopped and said, yeah, but look, then we have, there'll be it's in the corporate office. So you have the CEO, and then there is a CGO who is a woman, and then the third also is going to be a woman. And I think it's all going to be all women, like a C-level. And I stopped for a while, and my chairman said, why are you stopping and thinking? I said, no, would there be an issue that I'm promoting women, but I was really promoting the talent. He turned around and said, you know what, HEMAS is gender blind. Can't you even understand that now? I said, yeah, I'm sorry, but thank you for reminding me that, right? So I guess, in the organization, I didn't feel it. But having said that, externally, there's this perception. So everybody is not evolved the same way, right? So when I go out, you will be in a group of guys in suits who would crack jokes, which they are, it's okay for them, but they're not used to having a woman around. And do you take offense? No, I mean, unless it's really directed at you, you know that they're so not unconsciously they're doing it. And I would give as good as I take. And that's one. Second thing is, so it's also about you, how you handle yourself, and how do you own that space uniquely to you. So most importantly, when I was the CEO or MD of the transportation, it's maritime and logistics. It's a lot about entertainment, and that's playing golf or entertaining and drinking in the nights. And I took a call to tell my foreign principal saying, look, let's do dinner. And do you mind, my team will stick with you and take you wherever, because I'll go home by about 9:30, 10. My kids are there, and and I laid my ground rules very early, and you wouldn't believe how much they respected you for that. And
Right.
they wouldn't even, they'll say, Kasru, even if you can't, it's okay, we'll take your team. And they didn't move business because of it. So how you own it. And yeah, you'll have the odd guy who would treat you as if a woman who doesn't have anything between your ears. And at that point, you should be ready to take them on and just put them back in their place. But that's the minority, I'll be very honest.
All right, Kasturi. So brilliant ideas from, especially for the women out there who are listening to us. So let's move on to our final round, closing remarks. Your final message to those who are here with us, who are joining this meeting with us. What's your final message? What's your final message to motivate them or to give them an idea on how foreign internships or foreign experience can give them a boost in their career ladder? We'll start off with Nilanka. Very short, Nilanka.
Okay.
What's your final message?
I would say to never settle, because I've seen a lot of young people who, let's say, when they start their job, they say, okay, this is the final thing, I'm not moving on. But what you need to know is there's always more experiences ahead, which you should be courageous enough to test and try for. And this is something like Aiesec is giving a chance to have a different experience. So never settle for the experience that you have. Always try to get more experiences than what you have at the moment.
All right, Sanchi.
I guess it all starts with you. So don't forget to have self-love and self-respect, and just be the best version that you are capable of being. Forget the world, forget what everyone wants you to become. Just be true to yourself and go for it. World's your oyster. Just be really confident and believe in yourself.
Thank you, Sanchi. Hiroshi, what's your final message to the audience? Especially coming from a very diverse background, being engaged in a lot of things, music, dance, you name it. Hiroshi, what's your final message?
I would think, I guess, when someone asks me, Hiroshi, who are you? I would love to say I'm a dreamer, I'm scared of heights, and these are my desires, these are my fears. But instead, I end up saying I am a media journalist and I'm a musician. It's because who we are and what we do are merging now. It's such an important part of our life that it's becoming one. And that is why I think it's important that you invest in a career experience that sustains your confidence, because that is what's going to eventually connect you to your purpose and make you happy. And in terms of an international exposure, I would say it gives you a blank canvas. No one's out there with preconceived notions about you. You get a second chance at life. You get to really recreate yourself and to go as far as you can go. And all that conditioned, the life you lived, all the layers or your mistakes or your past, you can kind of overcome that, and you cross the ocean and you get a second chance. So I think this is that time where you can evaluate your capacity and do the best you can. So I think everyone should, at some point in their life, even for maybe a couple of days, it's something that you should definitely get yourself into.
Thank you, Hiroshi. Thank you. Francis, same question to you as well. What are your closing remarks? What's your final message to take home?
So what I would leave everyone with is don't feed your fears. It's very easy for us to be bogged down by the things that we cannot influence or the things that seem to be a mountain for us. Embrace your fears and let it guide you on your path to actually being great. Don't feed it.
Thank you, Francis. Kasturi, same question. What's your final message to our youngsters out there who are here with us, who is ready to enter the world of work, who is ready to take on foreign internships? What's your final take-home message?
I think all have said bits of what I have to say, but look, every experience is good experience. And when you go out there, you're going to learn such a different dimension of everything out there. Today, early on, I was with I think one of your programs, Masterminds at 5, and it was on startups. And there was somebody who said, even if you fail, that journey of failing, you learn lessons. And that's, you have something more than somebody else. So same thing. So you go out there, but whether you go out there or whether you stay here, it's what like Santi saying, while being the best version of yourself, figure out 1 or 2 things about yourself you're very good at, what you're going to be excellent at, and what is your differentiator versus the rest. Don't try to compete with others and get jealous. It's just that each one of you is unique, but know yourself what you're unique at and hone it and try to be better at it. That's it.
Thank you, Kastri. So, well, then it's a wrap for this evening. I hope our audience definitely had had the chance to listen to an insightful conversation from our 5 eminent speakers. So once again, thank you, Kastri, for joining us this evening. Thank you for your input. Thank you, Sanchi, for joining all the way from Australia, for your time. And Hiroshi, once again, thank you very much for taking some time off your valuable time and then giving it for us as well. And Francis, thank you for joining all the way from Sweden. Nilanka as well. Thank you for your time. So, well, that's a wrap, guys. Once again, thank you very much. And it was a pleasure having all 5 of you sharing your ideas this evening. Hope you all have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.